Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings MLB video for, we're on Wednesday, June 1st. It's a nice 11-game slate going on tonight. There's 15 games today, 4 of them starting in the afternoon. The other 11 are at 7 o'clock, and those are the games that we're going to concentrate on. So let's start right at the top. The idea of our Benny's Bat section here, we try to look at each pitcher that's on the mound, figure out what their weakness is, and then figure out which bats profile to do the best against them. So let's start right with the Boston and Baltimore game today. We got Joe Kelly on the mound for Boston. Right-handed bats have a higher average and more home runs against them. He's actually been pretty solid since coming back from the DL. This is a guy who, has a lot of giddy up on his fastball. He does tend to throw it straight sometimes, so he has been able to get knocked around for a couple home runs, which I think means that this Baltimore team kind of profiles pretty well against them. You look at a guy like Chris Davis, who I really like today. I think he's one of the top plays. 395 WOBA, 320 ISO score against right-handed pitching. He's 5 for 10 lifetime against Kelly already with the home run. So this is a guy who profiles well and has done well in his limited at-bats. We also got Manny Machado, very good in righty-on-righty situations. 393 WOBA for him, 253 ISO since the start of 2015. 3 for 9 lifetime against Kelly as well. So those are the two bats that I would really like to use to go up against Kelly. Both of them are kind of expensive, but I do like the fact that the game's in Baltimore. Very good hitter's park, and I think both of these guys are in for a good game today. On the other side of this game, Mike Wright pitching for Baltimore. One of the worst pitchers we have on the mound today. Left-handed bats have a higher average against him. He gives up a very high fly ball rate, so he could be somebody that gets knocked around for a couple home runs. David Ortiz, 431 WOBA, 346 ISO, 3 of 5 lifetime with 2 home runs against Wright. So he's obviously somebody that stands out. You can also look at the lefties, guys like Jackie Bradley Jr., Travis Shaw. Both of them have 350-plus WOBAs, lefty-on-righty matchups. And then even some guys in righty-on-righty matchups. Mookie Betts and Dustin Pedroia, righty-on-righty, both have 350-plus WOBAs. Both guys homered yesterday. Betts actually had 3 homers yesterday. Pedroia only hit 1. But again, this whole Boston team is hitting really well. This is a very solid lineup that can put up a lot of runs. So I think Mike Wright is going to be in some trouble here today against Boston. Next game, we can talk about Detroit at L.A. We got Michael Fulmer, the rookie, on the mound for Detroit, and he's actually been pretty good. The last 2 games, he's actually been great. Right-handed bats are probably the way to go after him. A little bit of a reverse splits action going on. In 17 innings pitched this year, they have a 286 batting average and 5 home runs in 17 innings against them. So right-handers definitely the way we want to attack them. That means a guy like Mike Trout is in a great spot today. 412 WOBA for him, 286 ISO score. I don't really like much of this Los Angeles Angels offense outside of Trout. He's pretty much the only guy that I'd really look at. On the other side of this game, we got Matt Schumacher. Right-handed bats have a higher average against him. He has a huge home run rate, huge fly ball rate to both right and left-handed bats. So with this Detroit team, you really want to look at guys with power, which is actually a lot of guys. The 2 that stand out the most with the best numbers, Miguel Cabrera, J.D. Martinez, those are probably at the top of the list. But I even think you can look down from there, guys like Ian Kinsler, Nick Castellanos, maybe Justin Upton, Victor Martinez. There's a lot of guys in this team that can jack a home run out. And I think all of them are going to be in play here. It's a good matchup for them. So I do like the Detroit bats today. Next game, we can talk about Washington at Philly. Max Scherzer on the mound for Washington. And he's lights out to right-handed bats, but left-handed bats have been able to hit him well. He's also had a little bit of a home run problem. He's been giving up a ton of home runs so far this year. There's not a lot of guys that I think profile well against him on Philly. There's not really a lot of home run hitters. I mean, I guess you can look at like Maikel Franco as one. At this point in his career, I no longer consider Ryan Howard one. The guy who I think does the best or profiles the best here is probably Odubel Herrera. Leading off on top of that order for the Phillies, 358 WOBA, 137 ISO. But in all honesty, I'm not looking to take a lot of bats against Scherzer here. I know he has been knocked around a little bit. I just don't think that Philly is one of those teams that's going to be able to put up a big number against them. Philly doesn't put up big numbers against anybody, really. So I think that this will still be a pretty solid spot for Scherzer. On the other side of this game, I do think Adam Morgan's going to get lit up. Right-handed bats hitting over 280 against them with a home run about every 5 innings pitched so far this year. guy like Ryan Zimmerman really stands out to me. 401 WOBA, 323 ISO against left-handed pitching. He's been absolutely killing lefties right now. So Zimmerman is definitely somebody I want to look at. Jason Wirt's been heating up, had a home run yesterday, 376 WOBA for him, 310 ISO score. Another guy that does very well against, left-handed pitching. Bryce Harper actually hits pretty well in lefty-on-lefty matchups too, but he sat out yesterday. He's been a little banged up. Not sure if he's going to play or not today, but if Harper's in there, even in a lefty-on-lefty matchup, I think he makes a little bit of sense as well. Next game we can look at, New York Yankees against the Toronto Blue Jays. Masahiro Tanaka on the mound for the Yankees, and he's been really good. Low batting average the last 2 years to both left and right-handed bats. His weakness is he does give up some solo home runs. He doesn't give up a lot of base runners, so when he does get tagged for a home run, it's usually a solo shot, so they don't hurt him all that much, but he is susceptible to giving up home runs. The one guy that I do kind of want to use to attack him here is Edwin Encarnacion, E5. E5, 376 WOBA, 268 ISO score. He's 7 of 16 lifetime against Tanaka with a home run. So he's the one guy on his team that does have some good numbers to back up the profile that he has against Tanaka. On the other side of this game, we got Aaron Sanchez, and you want to go after Sanchez with left-handed bats. They have a higher average against them. The guy who really stands out the most is Carlos Beltran, 359 WOBA, 222 ISO, 3 of 5 lifetime with a 2 of 5 lifetime with a home run. So he's probably the best bat if you're going to attack Sanchez. But like I said, the lefties are the ones that usually hit him well. So you can look at a guy like Ellsbury, you can look at a guy like Gardner. Maybe even look at a guy like Brian McCann. It is a game in Toronto, very good hitters ballpark. The home runs play pretty well there. So the guys that have a little bit of power, especially from the left side, are the ones who I think profile the best against, a guy like Sanchez. Next game we can talk about, we got Pittsburgh at Miami. Jonathan Neese on the mound for Pittsburgh. Right-handed bats hitting about 280 against them the last 2 years. Pretty high home run rate. One guy who really stands out to me on this Marlins team, Marcell Ozuna, has been one of their best hitters this year, even with Giancarlo Stanton being banged up and not playing. Ozuna's up to the cleanup spot in the order. 444 WOBA, 256 ISO against left-handed pitching since the start of last year. And he's 5 of 12 lifetime against Jonathan Neese already. So I do think Marcell Ozuna is in a very good spot. He's no longer cheap. You might find him cheap on some sites. I know he's not cheap on DraftKings anymore, but you can find him cheap on one of the sites you're playing on. I think it's perfectly fine to roll him out there. If you can't find him cheap, well, you know what? He's still a guy that profiles well enough that I think he's worth paying up for today. So I really like Ozuna. I think he's going to be somebody that, I have some shares of, especially in tournaments. On the other side of this game, we got Adam Connelly, another lefty, and he's been okay. Right-handed bats have a higher average against them, and they hit more home runs. Connelly does have a little bit of strikeout upside, but I think this is a really tough matchup for him against Pittsburgh. You got guys like McCutcheon, 379 WOBA, 195 ISO. Francisco Cervelli, one of my favorite catcher options today, 365 WOBA, 111 ISO. Josh Harrison, who's back up at the top of that order for them, 354 WOBA. Very small ISO. He's not a guy that has a lot of power, but he does get on base. He can steal a base for you, score some runs. You can even look at guys like Starlin Marte, Jung Ho Kong. I think all these guys are in play today. There's a lot of bats in this Pittsburgh team that I wouldn't mind having. And remember, even the last game, if they're able to chase Connelly early in the game, you're probably getting a bunch of right-handed relievers. That's what happened last game. You had a lefty start, and Polanco was hitting 7th. They chased the starter early. They brought in a righty, and then Polanco hit a big home run off him. So he's even another guy that I think could be in play. There's, basically from top to bottom, this whole Pittsburgh team I think is in a pretty good spot. Not the greatest hitters ballpark with them playing in Miami, but I do think they'll be able to get to Connelly and even get to whatever relief pitchers they put in there after they knock Connelly out of the game. Next game we can talk about, San Francisco against Atlanta. Matt Cain on the mound for San Francisco, and he really hasn't been all that good this year, but neither has Jake Peavy, and Jake Peavy just went 7 innings yesterday of 1 hit, 0 earned run ball against this Atlanta Braves team. I'm not using anybody on Atlanta. I mean, the one guy who profiles to do well is Freddie Freeman. He's basically the only bat that they have here, but this has been an epically bad offense so far this year. And, it's almost like a running joke that you can take anybody against them, but you know what? It's paid off. I mean, if you would have had Peavy yesterday, you would have got a really nice score for a really low price out of a guy that I don't think anybody thought was still capable of throwing a one-hitter over 7 innings. So, like I said, I'm not really using Cain. I understand the argument that people want to make for why you could use him today. And I really can't say anything against it. This Atlanta team has been that bad. So if you're staying away from all the Atlanta bats, it's been a very profitable thing to do this season. So I see no reason why we would stop it now. So nobody on Atlanta I'm really looking to use. Like I said, Freeman's the only guy that profiles well, but this offense is just so bad. The other side of this game, we got Williams Perez on the mound. Williams Perez, not a very good pitcher. Left-handed bats, higher average against them, more home runs. Right-handed bats have been okay against them too, so you can really take guys from either side of the plate. I like the lefties, Panic, Belt, Parker, Span. I think all those guys are worth a look. I also think righty on righty. You got guys like Hunter Pence, 374 WOBA, 189 ISO, righty on righty. Buster Posey, 352 WOBA, 154 ISO, righty on righty. Really like all these bats on San Francisco. Again, not the greatest hitters park down there in Atlanta, but I do think they have a very weak pitcher and they could put up some runs today. Next game we can talk about the LA Dodgers at the Chicago Cubs. John Lester on the mound for the Cubs. Lester's been okay. Right-handed bats hitting about 230 against them. A few more home runs for the righties than the lefties. There aren't many guys on the Dodgers that are right-handed bats that worry me. You got like a Kiki Hernandez towards the top of the order with his huge 447 WOBA, 286 ISO against left-handed pitching. He hits lefties very well. Trace Thompson back in the order here. Batted fifth yesterday. Will probably be in the 5 spot again today. 403 WOBA, 298 ISO score for him. So those are really the two best guys profile-wise to use against Lester. So I think Lester will have a decent start here. I don't see a lot of Dodgers, lighting them up and putting up a lot of runs. On the other side of this game, we got Bolsinger pitching for the Dodgers. I actually like Bolsinger, but not in this spot here. Left-handed bats have a higher average against them. Like I said, he's been okay. He's got a little bit of strikeout upside, but this is a really, really tough matchup for him. You look at a guy like Anthony Rizzo, who's been cold, but his 389 WOBA, 261 ISO score against right-handed pitching puts him in a good spot. I also like Chris Bryant, 382 WOBA for him, 213 ISO score. Those are the top two. You can also look at guys like Fowler and Zobrist and Hayward. This offense is just, it's very, very good, even though they haven't been hitting well lately. I mean, they got blanked yesterday. They were on like a historic rate coming into the beginning of May, and at the beginning of May, they've kind of cooled off a little bit here, but I still think the Chicago team has too much firepower. I don't love them today. It's not like I'm stacking up a whole bunch of Chicago bats, but I do think that they make some sense, and I wouldn't argue anybody who wanted to use any of them. Next game, Arizona at Houston. Robbie Ray on the mound for Arizona. Right-handed bats hitting about 270 against them, and so far in 2016, he's given up about a home run every 5 innings pitched to right-handed bats. A couple guys on this team that kind of profile well against them. Jose Altuve, 423 WOBA, 188 ISO against left-handed pitching. 4 for 8 lifetime with 2 extra base hits already off Robbie Ray. George Springer, 405 WOBA, 227 ISO. 3 of 4 lifetime with 2 doubles off of Robbie Ray. You can even look at guys like Carlos Correa, maybe a guy like White, the first baseman that they have. Any of those big right-handed bats, I think, are going to make it a tough day for Robbie Ray. And there's a lot of right-handed bats in that Houston team. Ray may get a couple strikeouts because this Houston team does strike out a lot, but I also think they're going to get some hits off him. And this Houston team swings from the heels. They swing for the fences, so I think they'll get 1 or 2 home runs coming out of this game as well. On the other side of the mound, we got Mikey Fires. He really hasn't been all that great this year. Both left and right-handed bats have kind of been hitting him hard. Right-handed bats actually have a higher fly ball rate and more home runs against them. So a guy like Paul Goldschmidt, I think, is in a great spot here. 403 WOBA for him, 247 ISO score, hits very well in righty-on-righty situations, has a ton of power. Houston is a ballpark where home runs tend to fly out of. So out here. Also think you can look at the 2 left-handed bats in this order. Jake Lamb being the big one that bats, normally in like the cleanup spot. 350 WOBA, 174 ISO for him. Always has some upside, especially in a good home run park like Houston. Also like Herman, the catcher. They have a really good platoon situation going on at the catcher. Wellington Castillo hits left-handed pitching really well. Herman, a left-handed bat, actually hits right-handed pitching pretty well. So when they go up against a righty like Fires, I think Herman's a guy that I'll look at for, a pretty cheap price. He's the left-handed bat in that platoon, and he's been doing pretty well this year, so I think he makes a little bit of sense to use as well. Next game we can look at is Tampa Bay at Kansas City. Chris Archer on the mound for Tampa Bay. He's been a reverse splits guy. Right-handed bats, higher average, more home runs against them. He's a tough guy to figure because sometimes he looks good, sometimes he looks absolutely horrible, so you never really know what to hide when he's on the mound. You can look at a left-handed bat like Eric Hosmer. 396 WOBA, 205 ISO. He's been doing very well this season, kind of carrying this offense with all the injuries that they've had. Whit Merrifield up in the 2-hole here, right-handed bat. He's got a pretty high average, been getting a lot of hits. He's somebody you can look at. And then, you look at some of those guys at the bottom of the order, like Paolo Orlando has been hot. Dyson's been getting some hits. They got a lot of injuries, and guys are like dropping like flies in this Royals team. So they don't have the same well-rounded, long kind of lineup that they have last year. You're missing Moustakas, you're missing Alex Gordon. There are a lot of guys hurt. Kendrys Morales isn't hitting like he did last year. So this is not the same lineup that they had last year, but I do still think there's a couple guys in here that could give Archer trouble. But I got to be honest, I don't hate Archer today. I think he's in a pretty decent spot against an offense that, is trying to find its identity with all these injuries. Next game we can talk about, or next guy we can talk about. On the other side of this game, we got the lefty, Danny Duffy. Had a pretty solid start, recently. Right-handed bats usually the way you want to attack him. About a 260 average against him over the last 2 years. He does have a high fly ball rate. And this Tampa Bay team is pretty good against left-handed pitching. You got guys like Geyer and Longoria with like 380, 390 WOBAs, nice 220, 230 ISO scores. And then even the guys that they moved up there, like Steve Pearce and Steven Sosa, who tend to hit towards the top of the order whenever they go up against pitcher. These guys both have some hot hits for you. Throw in like a Tyler Mata, who's been hitting in the, the 2-hole there. And you got 5 guys that are all right-handed that hit left-handed pitching pretty well. So I think this is going to be a tough spot for Duffy. Kansas City, not a big home run park, so I wouldn't expect to see them jack a bunch of them out of there, even though, Duffy's been known to give up a high fly ball rate. But I do think some of these Tampa Bay bats can do some damage against Duffy today. I think it's a sneaky spot for them because they do hit left-handed pitching pretty well. Now, Seattle against San Diego. Felix Hernandez on the mound for Seattle. I know his Ks are down a little bit this year, but other than that, he's pitched pretty well. Right-handed pitchers have basically owned San Diego this year, so I think it's a great spot here for Felix. There's really nobody on San Diego that stands out to me. I'm not going to look at guys like Brett Wallace. Kemp, probably their best hitter, so much better against left-handed pitching. So I think Felix is in a really good spot here. I don't have any bats I want to use against them, so he's probably a pitcher that I'm going to have some shares of. On the other side of the game, he's going up against Frederick, the young lefty. Also why I think he's a pretty good pitcher today, because Felix is in a really good spot for the win. Right-handed bats have a higher average and more home runs allowed against Frederick. And remember, San Diego, mostly for left-handed batters, is not a horrible home run park. It gets a bad rap as one of the worst, one of the best pitchers parks and one of the worst parks for hitters. But if you look at the underlying numbers, it's not the worst park for hitters. There are places that are worse. It's not a great park for hitters. It's not like Coors Field or anything, but it's not as horrible as some people say. There are some right-handed bats that I want to look at here. Whenever they have a lefty on the mound, I love Nelson Cruz, 442 WOBA, 319 ISO score. Has hit a ton of big home runs for us against left-handed pitching. So he's somebody I definitely want to use. A cheap option that flies under the radar and absolutely crushes lefties is Franklin Gutierrez. 398 WOBA, 276 ISO for him. And like I said, he owns left-handed pitching. So I think he could be the cheap option you throw in there in order to have the money to pay up and get a guy like Cruz. Another guy you can look at, the catcher, Chris Iannetta. 355 WOBA, 164 ISO. Another guy who hits left-handed pitching pretty well. So I think all 3 of those guys are definitely in play here for Seattle. Last game, I saved this one for last. Cincinnati against Colorado. The easy thing to say is just put everybody in the game. But then again, if you just went and game stacked this game yesterday, you probably won a lot of money. A lot of people were shied away from the rain. Those who actually stayed on it wound up with some huge scores. The Rockies hit like 6 home runs. I think the Reds added 3 more. A lot of the production came from the top of the order. I think we almost got 20 runs scored in this game yesterday. And let's face it, the Reds have one of the worst bullpens in the league and a pretty bad group of starters, including John Lamb, who's on the mound today. And it's not like Colorado has a, lights out kind of bullpen either. Their best pitcher arguably is probably John Gray, who pitched for them yesterday. Tyler Chatwood's not horrible, but he's also not very good. So let's start there with Chatwood. Right-handed bats actually have a higher average against them, but left-handed bats are okay too. Joey Votto, 402 WOBA, 231 ISO against righties stands out as the, top bat based on the numbers. I think you can look at a guy like Adam Duvall too. Duvall's been hitting a lot of home runs. I think he's got 12 or 13 of them already this year, which is surprising because a lot of people have no idea who he is. Chatwood being a guy who gives up a higher batting average to right-handed bats, the game being in cores, I think Duvall makes a lot of sense. 379 WOBA, 347 ISO, which is huge for him so far in 2015. So he's definitely a guy I want to have some shares of. You can look at Jay Bruce, who hit a home run yesterday, left-handed bat. Maybe Billy Hamilton, somebody who can get on and steal a couple bases. I only like using Hamilton when he's hitting up in the order. If they got him down there in the 7 or 8 spot, it's really tough for me to justify using him. But if he's hitting in the 2 hole in the order, I think he could be in play here. Now, on the other side of this game, we got John Lamb, the lefty. Right-handed bats have a higher average and more home runs against them, but left-handed bats have done okay too. So I think the 2 guys that stand out the most, Trevor Story, 398 WOBA, 309 ISO. Hopefully he's back up in the 2 hole in the order instead of down in the 7 hole like he was yesterday against the right-hander. Against lefties, he absolutely smashes from the right side. This horrible bullpen. I think Story's in a pretty good spot here, although he is expensive, so you're really going to have to pay up for him if you want him. If I'm paying up for anybody, it's probably going to be the guy at third base, Nolan Arenado. Another huge game for him yesterday, had the home run, 344 WOBA, 230 ISO score for Arenado. He's just an absolute monster against both right and left-handed pitching. His numbers are a little bit better in righty-on-righty situations, but I think it's just a matter of having a smaller sample size against lefties. He's never had a problem hitting lefties, even, throughout his career. So at this point, I think it's just a matter of getting him some more at-bats against lefties and, against lefties that aren't named like Clayton Kershaw or Madison Bumgarner. He's been able to put up some pretty good numbers. Other right-handed bats up there towards the top of the order. I mean, DJ LeMahieu, right-handed bat, should be in the 2 hole today, so he makes some sense. Like I said, I don't hate all these lefties, so guys like Blackman, guys like Cargo, guys like Parra all make a little bit of sense. Parra might not be in there. You might see like maybe a Ryan Rayburn in there today, which, Rayburn does hit left-handed pitching well. The problem is when the lefty comes out and the right-handed reliever comes in, you're probably going to get Parra pinch hitting for him or some kind of double switch with the pitcher. So at that point, I don't really think you want to, roll him out there because it's not really, a guy who's guaranteed 4 at-bats or so. I mean, when you use the Rockies at Coors, you're hoping that, they bat around in the first inning like they did yesterday and everybody winds up getting 5, maybe even 6 at-bats. Rayburn's not a guy who really has that happen because whenever they do bring in a right-handed relief pitcher, he's usually the first guy to get pulled out of the game. But I do think you want to have some exposure to the Cincy Colorado game. I mean, you'd be stupid not to, especially if you look at the, winning rosters from yesterday. Basically, everybody who won some money yesterday had some exposure here. And if you didn't have any exposure there, I don't care if you had Mookie Betts and his 3 home runs or not, you probably didn't do anything more than maybe min cash or, just get over the line in 50-50s. So that sums it up for today's edition of Benny's Bats. Thank you guys for joining us here at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.